My name is Olivia, and I just turned 30. For as long as I can remember, my birthday has been an afterthought in my family. While my brother Kyle gets celebrations worthy of royalty, this year I decided not to remind anyone. Instead, I used the $75,000 bonus no one knew about to buy myself a lakeside vacation home. The notifications exploded when I casually posted photos online. Before I dive into how I finally stood up for myself without saying a word, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever had to create your own celebration when others forgot what matters to you. I grew up in Westlake Hills, an affluent suburb where perfectly manicured lawns matched the perfectly manicured lives everyone pretended to have. Our five-bedroom colonial was the backdrop for what looked like the perfect American family from the outside. But inside those walls, the dynamic was crystal clear. My brother Kyle was the sun, and everyone else simply orbited around him. My father, Harold, built his wealth through corporate law, climbing to chief legal counsel for a Fortune 500 company by the time I was in middle school. He never missed an opportunity to brag about Kyle following in his footsteps. When Kyle made the high school debate team, Dad took the entire family out to the most expensive restaurant in town. When I was accepted into the National Honor Society with a perfect 4.0 GPA, he absently patted my shoulder and said, "That's nice, sweetheart," before returning to his newspaper. My mother, Elaine, was no better. A former beauty queen turned country club socialite, she dedicated her life to showcasing Kyle's achievements. Our living room walls were a shrine to Kyle. Trophies, certificates, and professional photographs documenting every milestone. My academic awards were tucked away in a box in the attic that I discovered by accident while looking for Christmas decorations when I was 14. The contrast between how our accomplishments were treated became painfully obvious on my 10th birthday. I woke up excited, bouncing down the stairs, expecting at least pancakes with candles. Instead, I found my parents and Kyle huddled around college brochures. Kyle was graduating high school that year, and apparently his college tour planning couldn't wait even on my birthday. The day passed without a cake, a card, or even an acknowledgement until my mother gasped around dinner time. "Oh goodness, Olivia, I completely forgot today was your birthday," she exclaimed, looking more embarrassed than sorry. "We've been so busy with Kyle's college applications." Dad barely looked up from his plate. "We'll get you something next weekend," he promised. A promise that was forgotten as easily as my birthday had been. Kyle, for his part, never seemed to notice the disparity in our treatment. At 4 years older, he accepted the adoration as his birthright, soaking up attention like a sponge. While not deliberately cruel to me, he existed in a bubble of privilege that made him oblivious to how I was sidelined. When he did notice, he would toss me a generic compliment or offer to let me tag along with his friends as though doing me an enormous favor. Family gatherings were particularly painful. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins would flock to Kyle, asking about his latest achievements, girlfriends, or career plans. I would sit quietly picking at my food, occasionally answering questions about school, but mostly feeling invisible. Holiday dinners inevitably turned into celebrations of whatever Kyle had most recently accomplished, with toast after toast raised to his success. When I was 16, I tried talking to my parents about how their favoritism made me feel. It took weeks to work up the courage, planning my words carefully so I wouldn't sound whiny or jealous. I approached them one evening while Kyle was at a friend's house. "Mom, Dad, can we talk about something?" I began, my heart pounding. "Of course, honey," Mom replied, though she continued scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath. "I feel like there's a big difference in how you treat me and Kyle. Like my accomplishments don't matter as much." Dad lowered his reading glasses, looking irritated at the interruption. "That's ridiculous, Olivia. We're very proud of both our children. But you never show it with me." I pushed back, voice trembling. "You forget my events, my birthdays, but Kyle gets parties and presents and constant praise." Mom finally put down her phone, sighing dramatically. "Sweetie, your brother is at a critical point in his life. His achievements now will determine his entire future. You're still young." Your time will come. Besides, Dad added dismissively, Kyle puts himself out there more. You've always been the quiet one. We can't celebrate what we don't know about. The conversation ended with reassurances that they loved us equally, but nothing changed. If anything, pointing out the disparity made them defensive and even less attentive to my achievements. College was my escape. I chose Northwestern, partly for its excellent communications program, but mostly because it was far enough from home to build my own life. I thought the distance might make them miss me, might make them see me as an individual rather than just Kyle's little sister. I hoped that absence would make their hearts grow fonder, that they might realize what they were missing by overlooking me all these years. I was wrong. The pattern of forgotten birthdays didn't improve with age or distance. If anything, being away at college and then building my career in Chicago made it even easier for my family to push my special days to the back burner. 3 birthdays stand out as particularly painful benchmarks in my ongoing invisibility. My 16th birthday should have been special in our community. Sweet 16 parties were almost as elaborate as weddings, with girls getting professional photo-oots, catered events, and sometimes even cars as gifts. For weeks leading up to the date, I dropped hints to my parents, left Sweet 16 party planning magazines open on the coffee table, and even circled the date on every calendar in the house. 2 days before my birthday, Mom casually mentioned over dinner, "Olivia, we need to drop you at Grandma Joanne's this weekend. Dad and I are taking Kyle to visit the Stanford campus for a special alumni recruitment event." It was a last-minute invitation we couldn't pass up. "This weekend?" I echoed, my voice small. "But Saturday is my birthday, my 16th birthday." The flash of recognition followed by guilt on my mother's face told me everything. She had completely forgotten again. "Oh, sweetie, I am so sorry," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. "The Stanford visit was scheduled months ago. It's such an important opportunity for Kyle. We can celebrate when we get back. Maybe take you shopping for something special." Kyle at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, poking at his mashed potatoes while avoiding eye contact. Dad, however, seemed irritated by the inconvenience of my feelings. Stanford is Kyle's dream school, Olivia. This could determine his entire future. Surely, you can understand that's more important than a birthday party that could happen any day. I spent my sweet 16 eating stale coffee cake with my grandmother, who at least remembered to buy a card, while my social media filled with photos of classmates having elaborate celebrations with their families. Meanwhile, my parents posted multiple pictures of Kyle touring Stanford, captioned with glowing pride about their brilliant son following tradition. My 21st birthday, another milestone, coincided with Kyle's engagement to his college girlfriend, Amanda. Rather than recognizing we could celebrate both occasions, my parents scheduled an elaborate engagement party for the exact weekend of my birthday. When I pointed this out during a phone call, my mother sounded genuinely perplexed. "But sweetie, engagements are once-in-a-lifetime events, and all the family is already flying in for this. You can have drinks with your college friends anytime." I attended the engagement party, smiled in photos, and gave a toast to my brother and future sister-in-law. No one mentioned it was also my birthday weekend until my cousin Megan, always more perceptive than the rest, pulled me aside. "Isn't your birthday this weekend too?" she asked, genuine concern in her eyes. "Yesterday, actually," I admitted quietly. "Oh God, Olivia, that's awful. Did they even acknowledge it?" I shrugged, trying to seem unbothered, though my eyes burned with unshed tears. "Mom sent a text yesterday morning. Dad hasn't mentioned it." Megan looked across the room at my parents, beaming proudly as they showed off Kyle and Amanda to distant relatives. "That's really messed up. I'm sorry." By my 25th birthday, I'd stopped expecting acknowledgement. I had built a life in Chicago, made real friends who valued me, and was establishing myself in my marketing career. Still, some childish part of me hoped turning 25 might finally register as important to my family. That year, Kyle received a prestigious industry award, and the ceremony fell on my actual birthday. The family not only attended en masse, but threw him a surprise congratulatory dinner afterward. I received a group text from my mother the following day. Hope you had a nice birthday, Olivia. Sorry we missed calling yesterday. Kyle's ceremony was just such a whirlwind. Sending love. The contrast between our celebrations couldn't have been more stark. For Kyle's 30th, my parents rented a yacht on Lake Michigan, inviting 60 guests for a sunset cruise with a live band and gourmet catering. Family flew in from across the country, some staying for an entire week of celebrations. For his 32nd, they surprised him with a family trip to Hawaii, renting a beachfront property for 10 days. I was invited along as an afterthought, but could only join for 4 days due to work commitments that my parents deemed unnecessary dedication to a job that will always be there. Just last year, for Kyle's 35th, they hired a celebrity chef to cater an intimate dinner at their home, flying in Kyle's college friends from around the country as a surprise. The event was documented extensively on social media, with my mother posting daily countdowns leading up to it. My best friend Jordan witnessed many of these disappointments over the years. After my 30th birthday passed with just a belated card from my parents and a text from Kyle, she finally snapped. "This is emotional abuse, Olivia," she declared over wine at her apartment. "You need to confront them directly about how screwed up this is. What would that accomplish?" I sighed, refilling my glass. "They'll just get defensive again. Tell me I'm being too sensitive. Or promise to do better next time, only to forget again. So, what's your plan? Just accept being treated like a footnote in your own family for the rest of your life?" I didn't have an answer then. Last year, I tried a different approach, mentioning casually during phone calls in the weeks leading up to my birthday that I was looking forward to turning 31 and thinking about taking the day off work to do something special. The hints fell on deaf ears. My birthday came and went with a 2-day late text from Mom and nothing from Dad or Kyle. That was the moment something shifted inside me. I made a decision that night, crying into my pillow. I would stop expecting acknowledgement from people who had proven repeatedly they were incapable of giving it. I would stop making myself vulnerable to the same hurt year after year. Most importantly, I would start celebrating myself rather than waiting for validation that never came. I had no idea then how powerfully that decision would change everything. While my family consistently overlooked my personal milestones, I was quietly building a career that even they would eventually have to acknowledge. After graduating with honors from Northwestern with a degree in marketing and communications, I landed an entry-level position at Burke Marketing Group, a mid-sized agency in Chicago. The pay was average, but the opportunity to learn from industry veterans was priceless. For 3 years, I volunteered for extra projects, stayed late, came in weekends, and absorbed everything I could about digital marketing strategy. When my boss left for Apex Creative Solutions, one of the top firms in the country, he invited me to join him. It meant longer hours and more pressure, but also a significant jump in salary and prestige. When I called my parents to share the news, my father's response was predictably dismissive. "Advertising, huh? Well, I suppose someone has to do it, though. I always thought you'd eventually go to law school like your brother." I swallowed my disappointment and focused on the opportunity ahead. Apex handled major international brands, and though I started in a junior position, I quickly distinguished myself through a combination of creative thinking and meticulous execution. Teresa Williams, the executive creative director, took notice of my work about a year into my time at Apex. When a major skincare company approached the agency about rebranding their entire product line for the Gen Z and millennial markets, Teresa unexpectedly added me to the pitch team. "Your demographic insight report on the Whitney account impressed me," she explained when I asked why I'd been selected. "You understand these younger consumers in a way some of our more senior people don't. I need that perspective for this pitch." The pitch was successful, and suddenly I found myself second in command on a multi-million-dollar account. For the next 2 years, I worked tirelessly on the campaign, often arriving at the office before sunrise and leaving well after dark. I missed friends' birthdays, canceled vacation plans, and pushed my personal life aside to ensure the launch was perfect. My dedication went beyond the required. I created detailed buyer personas, insisted on extensive focus group testing, and personally rewrote copy that didn't feel authentic to the target demographic. When other team members complained about my perfectionism, Teresa backed me completely. Olivia has a vision for this campaign, she told them. Trust her instincts. The launch exceeded all expectations. The skincare line saw a 37% increase in sales within the first quarter, with particularly strong performance in previously untapped younger markets. Industry publications featured case studies on our approach, and the client immediately increased their annual marketing budget with Apex. 4 months after the successful launch, all employees were called to an unexpected company-wide meeting. The CEO, Martin Green, rarely addressed the entire staff, so speculation ran wild as we filed into the conference center. Thanks to record-breaking performance this quarter, Martin announced, Apex will be distributing profit-sharing bonuses to all employees next month. Cheers erupted around the room. Profit sharing had been mentioned in our employment contracts, but had never actually materialized in the 5 years since the policy was implemented. Additionally, Martin continued, once the noise died down, we will be recognizing several team members whose extraordinary contributions made this quarter's success possible. He proceeded to call up various department heads and senior executives who gave brief speeches about their team's accomplishments. I applauded along with everyone else, genuinely happy for my colleagues' recognition. When Teresa took the microphone, she spoke about the skincare account and its unprecedented success. But the real architect of this campaign, she said, was someone who embodies the future of Apex. Olivia Marshall, would you please join me? Stunned, I made my way to the front of the room while my colleagues applauded. Teresa highlighted specific elements of the campaign that had proven most effective, crediting me by name for each innovation. Martin returned to the microphone, shaking my hand firmly. Olivia represents the kind of talent that drives Apex forward, he said, and we believe in rewarding exceptional performance. Teresa, would you like to share the news? Teresa smiled warmly. Olivia, in recognition of your contribution to the most successful campaign in Apex history, the board has approved a special performance bonus of $75,000 to be paid in addition to your regular profit sharing. The room erupted again. I stood frozen, certain I had misheard. $75,000 was nearly my entire annual salary. As the meeting concluded, colleagues surrounded me with congratulations and good-natured jokes about what I would do with the money. Later that afternoon, I received a formal letter confirming the bonus and detailing the tax, withholding information. It would be deposited within 2 weeks. I sat at my desk, staring at the letter in disbelief. My first instinct was to call my parents. Surely this kind of professional accomplishment with such tangible financial recognition would finally impress them. I picked up my phone, then slowly set it down again. Just the previous month, during a rare visit home, I had attempted to share some news about a smaller industry award I'd received. My father had interrupted me mid-sentence to take a call from Kyle, then completely forgotten I was telling him something when he returned to the table. Later, when I tried again, he had remarked, "That advertising stuff is fine for now, Olivia, but when are you going to do something substantial with your career?" The memory of that dismissal was still fresh. I realized that sharing my bonus news would likely result in similar minimization. Or worse, they might suddenly show interest in my finances after years of treating my career as trivial. Either way, the moment that should bring pride would instead leave me hurt again. I decided then to keep the bonus information private. This achievement was mine alone, earned through dedication my family had never acknowledged or supported. The validation from my industry peers and mentors meant more than my family's belated approval ever could. That night, I opened a new high-yield savings account and set up the deposit information for when the bonus arrived. For the first time in my adult life, I would have significant savings beyond my emergency fund. Financial independence had always been important to me, but this windfall represented something deeper. Concrete recognition of my worth that no one could diminish or ignore. I celebrated quietly that evening with Jordan, who screamed and jumped around my apartment when I told her. "This is huge, Sid. We need champagne, the expensive kind," she insisted, already ordering delivery from the nearest liquor store. As we toasted my success later, Jordan asked the inevitable question, "So, what are you going to do with all that money?" I smiled, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "I'm not sure yet, but whatever it is, it will be just for me." I had no idea then how prophetic those words would become, or how they would set in motion a chain of events that would finally force my family to see me clearly. As my 31st birthday approached, the familiar signs that my family would once again forget appeared right on schedule. The family group chat buzzed constantly with discussions about Kyle's upcoming job promotion party. After 10 years with his law firm, he was being made junior partner, an achievement my father repeatedly called the proudest moment of my life. My mother sent multiple messages about the party planning, debating menu options, asking for input on decorations, and coordinating extended family travel arrangements. The celebration was scheduled for 3 weeks after my birthday, but the planning consumed all family communication. 2 weeks before my birthday, my mother called to discuss the family gift for Kyle. "We're thinking of going in together on a luxury watch," she explained. "Something he can wear proudly in the courtroom. It would be about $500 from each of us." I agreed to contribute, knowing it was easier than explaining why I might hesitate. As the call ended, my mother added, "Oh, and we need you to take Friday off in 3 weeks for the party. Your father is insisting everyone be there Thursday evening for a family dinner before the main event Friday." Neither of them mentioned my upcoming birthday, though it was marked on the family calendar I knew hung in their kitchen. After last year's disappointment, I had made a deliberate choice not to remind them. This year, I wanted to see what would happen if I said absolutely nothing. The morning of my birthday arrived. A perfect spring Tuesday, with sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows. I checked my phone, emails from work, texts from Jordan and 2 other friends, birthday notifications from various retailers offering free items or discounts, but nothing from my family. Not even the pre-functor text my mother usually remembered to send by mid-afternoon. I had taken the day off work without telling anyone in my family. A small act of rebellion, claiming the day for myself when they couldn't be bothered to acknowledge it. After a leisurely shower, I dressed in my favorite outfit and walked to a French cafe near my apartment, treating myself to an extravagant breakfast of croissants, fresh fruit, and excellent coffee. Sitting by the window, I scrolled through property listings on my phone, something I had been doing casually for months. With Chicago's real estate prices, I had assumed homeownership was years away, but my unexpected bonus had changed the equation. Initially, I had planned to simply invest the money. But as I sipped my coffee, a different idea took shape. A listing caught my eye. A lakefront cottage 2 hours from Chicago in a small Michigan town known for its scenic beauty and proximity to wineries and hiking trails. The 3-bedroom home needed some cosmetic updates, but had solid bones, an amazing deck overlooking the water, and best of all, was listed at a price that would make the bonus sufficient for a substantial down payment. On a whim, I called the listed agent, half expecting to leave a message. To my surprise, Patricia answered immediately. "I'm actually in Chicago today showing properties," she said when I explained my interest. "I could meet you this afternoon to discuss the lake house if you're serious." 3 hours later, I sat across from Patricia at another cafe, reviewing detailed information about the property and the surrounding area. "Investment properties in this region have been appreciating steadily," she explained, showing me comparable sales data. "And if you decide to rent it out short-term during periods you're not using it, the vacation rental market is extremely strong during summer and fall." I hadn't considered renting it out, I admitted. I was thinking of it more as a personal retreat. Patricia nodded understandingly. Many of my clients start that way, using the property primarily for themselves, but knowing the rental potential provides financial flexibility and can help justify the purchase if you're on the fence. I wasn't on the fence. With each photo Patricia showed me, each detail she shared about the peaceful community and the proximity to nature, I felt increasingly certain that this was exactly what I needed. The current owners are motivated sellers, Patricia continued. They've relocated for work and are carrying 2 mortgages. If you're seriously interested, I could arrange a virtual tour this week and potentially get an offer in before someone else snaps it up. By late afternoon, I was back in my apartment, laptop open for a detailed virtual tour of the property. The real estate agent on site walked through each room, opening closets, showing the views from every window, and taking specific measurements at my request. The more I saw, the more I could envision myself there. Mornings with coffee on the deck, watching the sunrise over the lake. Evenings by the stone fireplace with a book. Weekends exploring the surrounding forests and small towns. When the virtual tour ended, I sat in silence for several minutes. This was a major decision, one that would commit a significant portion of my bonus and tie me to a mortgage payment for years to come. The financially prudent choice would be to wait, to research more thoroughly, to perhaps look at properties in person before making an offer. But something deeper was driving me. This house represented everything my family had never given me. Recognition of my worth. A space that was entirely mine, a celebration of my achievements that no one could diminish or forget. With sudden clarity, I knew what I wanted to do. I emailed Patricia, "I'd like to make an offer on the lake house. Please prepare the paperwork." Her response came quickly with attachment forms to complete. I spent the next hour filling out preliminary mortgage application documents and gathering financial information to support my offer. As I worked, my phone remained silent. No birthday wishes from my family, not even a text. At 6:17 in the evening of my 31st birthday, I signed an electronic offer for the lake house and authorized the earnest money deposit from my savings account. The moment I clicked submit, a wave of emotion washed over me, equal parts exhilaration, anxiety, and profound satisfaction. I walked to a nearby park as the evening light softened, finding a bench overlooking a small pond. Ducks glided across the surface, unbothered by the joggers and dog walkers passing by. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace on my birthday. Despite, or perhaps because of my family's neglect, my phone rang just as I was heading home. My mother's name flashed on the screen. "Olivia, darling," she said when I answered, her voice animated. "I've been working on the menu for Kyle's party, and I need your input. Do you think we should go with the salmon or the beef tenderloin for the main course? The caterer needs to know by tomorrow." I listened as she continued discussing party details, never once mentioning what day it was. Eventually, I offered a non-committal opinion on the food choices, keeping my voice neutral. "By the way," she added before ending the call, "we need you to pick up Aunt Julia from the airport for Kyle's party. Your father will be too busy with the partners from the firm and Kyle will be meeting with the photographer." "Sure, Mom," I replied evenly, betraying nothing of the day's events or my emotions. "You're such a reliable daughter," she said absently. "Kyle is so lucky to have you as a sister." After we hung up, I opened my email to find the confirmation that my offer had been submitted. A strange calm settled over me. For 31 years, I had hoped for recognition from my family that never came. Today, I had finally recognized myself. The week after my birthday passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and nervous anticipation. Patricia called the day after I submitted my offer with unexpected news. "The sellers accepted your offer without a counter," she told me, excitement evident in her voice. They appreciated the clean offer with minimal contingencies, and they're eager for a quick closing. "How soon can you meet with a mortgage broker?" I had researched several lenders online but hadn't committed to any. Patricia recommended a broker she had worked with frequently who specialized in vacation properties. Michael understands the unique aspects of second home purchases. She explained he can often find better terms than the big banks for these types of properties. The following afternoon, I met with Michael at his office in downtown Chicago. I brought documentation of my income, the bonus letter, bank statements, and credit reports. "Your financial position is excellent," Michael noted as he reviewed my paperwork. "Perfect credit score, low debt-to-income ratio, and substantial down payment. This should be a straightforward approval. The mortgage process moved with surprising speed. Because of my strong financial position and the relatively modest loan amount, the underwriting was completed within days rather than weeks. The inspection revealed only minor issues that the sellers agreed to address before closing. 3 weeks after submitting my offer, exactly 1 day before Kyle's promotion party, I signed the final papers and received the keys to my vacation home. The timing struck me as poetically perfect. The next morning, instead of driving to my parents' house for the family dinner preceding Kyle's celebration, I drove in the opposite direction toward Michigan and my new property. I had called my mother the previous evening with a fabricated emergency at work. "I'm so sorry, Mom, but I won't be able to make it tonight. The Anderson account is imploding, and as project lead, I have to handle it personally." She had been disappointed but quickly moved on to discussing last-minute details for Kyle's party. "Well, you'll still make it tomorrow, right? Kyle would be devastated if you missed his big day." I promised to do my best, knowing I had no intention of attending. For once, my milestone would take precedence over Kyle's. Driving up to the lake house for the first time as its owner was a surreal experience. The listing photos hadn't captured the way sunlight dappled through the trees lining the long driveway, or how the lake seemed to stretch endlessly from the back deck. The house itself, a charming blue-gray Cape Cod with white trim and a wraparound porch, looked like something from a postcard. Standing in the empty living room, I felt a mixture of terror and elation. The 3-bedroom cottage was modest by my parents' standards, but perfect for me. The main floor featured an open-concept living area with a vated ceiling and stone fireplace, a dining space overlooking the lake, and a kitchen that needed updating but was entirely functional. A primary bedroom suite completed the main level, while upstairs held 2 additional bedrooms and a small office nook under the eaves. The deck was the true showstopper. Wrapping around 3 sides of the house, it offered multiple seating areas and unobstructed views of the water. A gently sloping path led down to a private dock where I could imagine spending countless summer hours. I had brought an air mattress, basic toiletries, and a cooler with food, planning to camp out in my empty house for the weekend. As I unloaded these minimal supplies, a silver-haired woman approached from the neighboring property. "Hello there! You must be the new owner," she called cheerfully, carrying a covered dish. "I'm Margaret Wilson. My husband James and I are your neighbors to the north." Margaret insisted I join them for dinner, brushing aside my protests about imposing. "Nonsense. It's a tradition around here to welcome newcomers. Besides, I've made far too much lasagna for just the 2 of us." That evening, sitting on Margaret and James's screened porch with a glass of locally made wine, I learned about the close-knit lakeside community. Most owners were a mix of retirees and professionals with primary homes in Chicago or Detroit, using the lake houses for weekends and vacations. "You'll love it here," James assured me. "Summer brings boating and swimming, fall has the changing colors and wine tours, winter offers cross-country skiing, and spring brings wildflowers and bird-watching. Each season has its own magic." The next morning, I drove to the nearest town, a charming village 30 minutes away with several furniture stores, home goods shops, and a farmer's market. I spent the day selecting essential pieces, a comfortable bed, a sofa and armchairs for the living room, a dining table that could accommodate small gatherings, and basic kitchen supplies. "Delivering out to Silver Lake?" asked the furniture store owner when I arranged shipping. "You must be the new owner of the old Peterson place." Word travels fast around here. Over the next month, I spent every weekend at the lake house, gradually transforming it from an empty shell into a personal sanctuary. I painted the kitchen cabinets a soft blue-gray, replaced dated light fixtures with simple modern ones, and furnished each room with care. The primary bedroom became a retreat of soft whites and pale blues reminiscent of the lake itself. The guest rooms each had their own character, one with a nautical theme, the other with botanical prints and woven textures. Occasionally, I checked my phone to find missed calls from my parents, usually related to some aspect of Kyle's ongoing partnership celebration events. There had been the main party followed by a partner's retreat weekend, Then a client appreciation event where the family was expected to attend. Each time I offered polite excuses about work commitments, never mentioning where I was actually spending my time. 6 weeks after purchasing the house, I took a full week off work to complete the transformation. I planted window boxes with trailing flowers, hung art on previously bare walls, and added the finishing touches that made the space truly mine. By Friday evening, exhausted but deeply satisfied, I stood on the deck, watching the sunset turn the lake to molten gold. The house now reflected not just my aesthetic preferences, but my journey. In the living room, framed certificates of professional achievements hung alongside beautiful landscape photography I had collected over the years. The bookshelves held volumes that had shaped my thinking, small mementos from travels and photos of the friends who had consistently celebrated my worth when my family did not. That first complete weekend in my fully furnished home became a personal retreat. I woke with the sunrise, took long walks along the lakeshore, read books I had been meaning to get to for months, and cooked elaborate meals just for the pleasure of it. On Sunday morning, I sat on the dock with my coffee, watching a family of ducks navigate the reeds along the shoreline. On impulse, I took out my phone and captured the scene, then turned the camera to show different angles of the house and property. I took photos of the morning light filtering through the trees, the colorful Adirondack chairs on the deck, the view from the primary bedroom window, and several interior shots showcasing my decorating efforts. Back inside, I scrolled through the images, feeling a surge of pride at what I had created. Without overthinking it, I selected the best photos and opened Instagram, a platform I rarely used except to keep up with friends. I created a casual post with the caption, "Weekend Vibes." Nothing beats lake life. I hesitated briefly before hitting share, wondering if posting was somehow seeking the validation I had decided to stop pursuing. But this felt different, like documenting a personal milestone rather than fishing for approval. I tapped the button and set my phone aside, returning to my peaceful Sunday activities. It wasn't until early evening, as I was preparing to drive back to Chicago, that I checked my phone again. The post had accumulated dozens of likes and comments, mostly from friends expressing surprise and asking questions about the beautiful property, and then I saw them notifications of comments from my mother, father, and Kyle. A strange calm settled over me as I read their increasingly incredulous responses. After years of seeking their attention and acknowledgement, I had finally gotten it without trying. The irony wasn't lost on me. I put my phone away without responding, finished packing my overnight bag, and took one last walk around the property before locking up. Whatever storm was brewing with my family would keep until tomorrow. Tonight belonged to me, to this achievement, to this place that represented everything I had built for myself when no one else was watching. Monday morning brought the expected barrage of messages. I had barely settled at my desk with my first cup of coffee when my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Whose house is that? Are you staying with friends? Call me immediately." I ignored it along with the 3 missed calls from my father that had come in while I was in the shower. By lunchtime, Kyle had joined the chorus with his own message. "Mom and Dad are freaking out about your Instagram post. What's going on?" The comments on the post itself had grown increasingly demanding. "Mother Olivia, I don't understand. Whose vacation home is this? Why wouldn't you tell us you were going away for the weekend? Father Olivia, call your mother immediately. Where did you get money for property? This is concerning behavior." Kyle, must be nice to waste money on vacation rentals while we're planning my partnership celebration. Some of us are focused on career advancement rather than playing house. Each comment revealed their assumptions that I couldn't possibly own such a place, that any major purchase I made should be cleared with them first, that my choices were frivolous compared to Kyle's accomplishments. By mid-afternoon, extended family members had begun reaching out as well. "Aunt Julia, lovely photos. Olivia, I didn't know you bought a lake house. Your mother seemed surprised, too." Cousin Megan was more direct. "OMG, did you buy a house without telling anyone?" The family group chat is exploding. Just before 5, a group text arrived from my mother. "Family dinner this Thursday at 7. No excuses, Olivia." We need to discuss several things as a family. The 3 days leading up to Thursday's dinner were surprisingly peaceful. I had expected continued calls and messages, but after the initial flurry, an ominous silence fell. I knew they were waiting for the in-person confrontation, gathering their arguments and grievances to present as a unified front. Thursday evening arrived with a spring thunderstorm that matched my turbulent emotions. I considered canceling, claiming illness or work obligations, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of their disapproval or dismissal. I had built something they couldn't diminish, achieved success they couldn't ignore. I arrived at my parents' home precisely at 7, parking behind Kyle's BMW in the circular driveway. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell rather than using my key, a small act that positioned me as a guest rather than the perpetually available daughter. My mother opened the door, her expression a careful mask of neutrality. "Olivia, come in. Everyone's in the living room." The atmosphere was tense with my father standing by the fireplace, drink in hand, and Kyle seated in an armchair scrolling through his phone. Both looked up as I entered, their expressions mirroring my mother's forced composure. "Drink," my father offered curtly. "White wine, please," I replied, taking a seat on the sofa. We engaged in stilted small talk through appetizers, discussing the unseasonable weather and an upcoming charity gala my mother was helping organize. No one mentioned the lake house or my Instagram post, though it hung in the air between us like an uninvited guest. It wasn't until we were seated at the dining room table, plates of my mother's signature roast beef before us, that my father finally broached the subject. "So, Olivia," he began, his lawyer voice in full effect, "would you care to explain the photos you posted?" "Whose property is that?" I took a sip of wine, meeting his gaze directly. "It's mine. I bought it last month." The silence that followed was broken by my mother's nervous laugh. "That's not possible, darling. Houses cost hundreds of thousands of dollars." "Yes, they do," I agreed calmly. "This one cost $340,000. I put $75,000 down and financed the rest." Kyle's fork clattered against his plate. "Where would you get $75,000 for a down payment? That's ridiculous." I turned to him, maintaining my composure. "I received a performance bonus at work for leading the most successful campaign in the company's history." My father frowned, setting down his knife with deliberate precision. "You never mentioned any bonus or any significant campaign for that matter." "No, I didn't," I acknowledged. "Just like none of you mentioned my birthday 3 weeks ago." The reference to my forgotten birthday created another awkward silence quickly broken by my mother's defensive response. "Olivia, we've been incredibly busy with Kyle's partnership celebrations. These are once-in-a-lifetime events that required all our attention." "They always are," I replied softly. "Every year there's some reason my birthday isn't worth remembering. While Kyle's accomplishments merit weeks of celebration." Kyle shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "That's not fair, Sid. Nobody deliberately forgot your birthday, didn't they?" I asked, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "When was the last time any of you remembered my birthday without me reminding you? When was the last time you planned even a simple dinner to celebrate me while Kyle gets yacht parties and celebrity chefs?" My father's expression hardened. "This isn't about birthdays. This is about making major financial decisions without consulting your family. Purchasing real estate is serious business that requires experience and knowledge." "I have both," I countered. "I researched thoroughly, worked with reputable professionals, and made a sound investment. My finances are excellent. My credit is perfect, and the property is already appreciating in value." "But why wouldn't you tell us?" my mother pressed. Genuine confusion in her voice. "We're your family. We should know about important developments in your life." The question struck at the heart of our dysfunctional dynamic. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't soften my response to protect their feelings. "Because you've never shown interest in the important developments in my life," I stated plainly. "My academic achievements, career milestones, and personal celebrations have always been afterthoughts, if they're acknowledged at all. Why would I share my success with people who have consistently devalued it? That's absurd, my father scoffed. We've always supported both our children equally. I laughed, the sound surprisingly bitter, even to my own ears. Dad, that's simply not true. Let me remind you of a few examples. Calmly but firmly, I recounted the pattern of forgotten birthdays while contrasting them with Kyle's elaborate celebrations. I reminded them of my 16th birthday when they took Kyle to Stanford, my 21st that coincided with his engagement party, and last year when they couldn't even manage a phone call. Every milestone in my life has been overshadowed by something involving Kyle, I continued, every accomplishment minimized or ignored. So when I received recognition at work in the form of a substantial bonus, I decided to use it for something that would bring me joy without seeking approval I knew wouldn't come. Kyle, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. I had no idea you felt this way, Sid. I mean, I knew Mom and Dad made a bigger deal about my stuff, but I didn't realize your birthdays were consistently forgotten. My mother's eyes had filled with tears. We never meant to make you feel less important, Olivia. We love you just as much as Kyle. I believe you think that's true, I replied. But your actions have consistently shown otherwise. My father, never comfortable with emotional confrontations, attempted to redirect the conversation, regardless of past misunderstandings. Buying property without any input from family is irresponsible. What do you even know about maintaining a lake house? The winterization alone will cost thousands. I've already arranged for all of that, I answered, and I've made connections with local service providers and neighbors who have been incredibly welcoming and helpful, unlike my own family. There's no need to be harsh, Olivia, my mother admonished. We're simply concerned about such a major decision. No, you're concerned that I made a major decision without your input or control. I corrected her. You're concerned that I achieved something substantial that had nothing to do with Kyle. Mostly, you're concerned that I finally stopped seeking validation from people who have proven repeatedly they won't give it. I stood up, placing my napkin beside my barely touched dinner. I'm not interested in your approval of my purchase. I'm not interested in your belated concern about my birthday or my feelings. What I am interested in is being recognized as an independent adult who has built a successful life despite not because of my family's support. My father rose as well, his face flushed with anger. You're being dramatic and ungrateful. Everything we've done has been for both our children's benefit. I'm being honest, I countered, perhaps for the first time. And if honesty seems dramatic to you, that says more about our family dynamic than it does about me. I gathered my person jacket, suddenly eager to be anywhere but there. I won't be attending the remainder of Kyle's partnership celebrations. I have a lake house to enjoy and a life to live that doesn't revolve around being a supporting character in the Kyle show. Kyle looked genuinely distressed. Sid, wait, don't leave like this. I'm not leaving like this, I replied, softening slightly at his evident concern. I'm leaving as someone who has finally recognized her own worth when her family couldn't. There's a difference. My mother followed me to the door, tears now streaming down her face. Olivia, please, we can fix this. We can do better. I turned to her one last time before stepping outside into the now gentle rain. Maybe you can, but I'm not holding my breath waiting for it anymore. The drive back to my apartment should have felt terrible after such a confrontation, but instead, I experienced a profound sense of relief. For years, I had carried the weight of their neglect, trying to make myself smaller, more accommodating, less needy in hopes they might finally see me. Laying down that burden felt like flying. And instead of returning to my apartment, I made a spontaneous decision to drive straight to the lake house. It was a Thursday night, and I had work the next day. But suddenly, nothing seemed more important than waking up in the space I had created for myself, surrounded by tangible proof of my worth. As I drove through the night, rain giving way to clear skies dotted with stars, I felt a lifetime of pent-up emotions finally finding release. I had stood up for myself, named the pattern of neglect without minimizing it, and walked away with my dignity intact. The lake house awaited, a beacon of self-determination at the end of a long, dark road. The week following the confrontation passed in complete silence from my family. No calls, no texts, no emails. In previous years, this silence would have devastated me, sent me spiraling into self-doubt and anxious attempts to make amends, even when I wasn't at fault. This time, I felt only a calm certainty that I had done the right thing by finally speaking my truth. I had taken Friday off work, spending a long weekend at the lake house. The solitude that once would have felt like punishment now felt like a gift. I walked along the shoreline, collecting smooth stones, read books on the deck, and introduced myself to more neighbors. Each small interaction reinforced that I was building a life entirely my own, defined by my choices rather than my family's perception. On Sunday evening, as I was preparing to return to Chicago, my phone displayed a notification I hadn't expected. A text from Kyle. "Can we talk? Just us? No mom and dad." We arranged to meet for coffee the following Saturday in a neutral location, a cafe halfway between Chicago and our parents' suburb. I arrived first, securing a quiet table in the corner where our conversation wouldn't be overheard. Kyle looked uncharacteristically unsettled when he arrived, his usually perfect appearance, slightly rumpled, dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. "Thanks for meeting me," he began awkwardly, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Thursday." "About what?" I asked, neither hostile nor particularly warm. He met my eyes directly for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. "About how right you were, about all of it. The forgotten birthdays, the constant spotlight on my achievements, the way they've always treated us differently. You never noticed before." I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "I think part of me did," he admitted, but it was easier not to examine it too closely. "I benefited from the imbalance, so why question it? That sounds terrible when I say it out loud." "It does," I agreed, "but I appreciate your honesty." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. "After you left, Mom cried for hours. Dad just kept pouring drinks and muttering about ingratitude. I started thinking about all the birthdays you mentioned, realizing I couldn't remember a single celebration for you in recent years. Then I started looking back at family photos." He pulled out his phone, opening his photo gallery. "Look at this. Mom and Dad's anniversary last year." The photo showed our parents flanked by Kyle and his wife, with me standing slightly apart as though I had been included as an afterthought. He swiped to another image. Christmas, 3 years ago again. The composition placed Kyle centrally with our parents while I was positioned on the periphery. "It's in every photo, Olivia. You're literally marginalized in our family pictures." Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I nodded, unsurprised by the visual confirmation of what I had felt for decades. "I'm sorry," Kyle said quietly. "I'm sorry I never noticed, never spoke up, never made sure you were included. And I've been so caught up in my own life, accepting their favoritism as my due without considering what that meant for you." His apology, unexpected and seemingly genuine, loosened something tight in my chest. "Thank you for saying that. Your lake house is beautiful, by the way," he added with a small smile. "I looked more closely at your photos after you left. It suits you somehow. Elegant, but not showy, comfortable, but still sophisticated." We talked for nearly 3 hours, longer than we had spoken one-on-one in years. Kyle shared his own complicated feelings about our parents' expectations, the pressure of being the golden child, the fear of disappointing them that drove many of his life choices. I spoke about my marketing career, my friendships, and my growing confidence in my own path. "Would you consider coming to the lake house sometime?" I asked as we prepared to leave. "Not right away, but maybe in a few weeks. I could show you around, introduce you to my neighbors." "I'd like that," he replied, genuine warmth in his voice. "And Olivia, happy belated birthday." The following weekend, my best friend Jordan finally visited the lake house, bringing champagne, gourmet snacks, and a belated birthday gift, a beautiful wind chime for the deck that sent melodic notes dancing across the water when the breeze caught it. "This place is absolutely you," she declared after the grand tour. "Peaceful, but with depth. Beautiful without being flashy, and way more substantial than anyone gives it credit for." We spent the weekend hiking nearby trails, visiting local wineries, and talking late into the night on the deck. Jordan, who had witnessed years of my family's neglect, was fiercely proud of my confrontation. "You finally stopped accepting crumbs from people who should have been giving you the whole bakery," she said, as we toasted under the stars. "That's the real achievement here, even more than this gorgeous house." At work, my success continued to build on itself. The recognition from the skincare campaign led to more high-profile assignments and increased responsibility. Colleagues who had once viewed me as merely competent now sought my input on strategic decisions. Teresa, my mentor, nominated me for an industry award that recognized emerging leaders in marketing. "You've found your voice," she commented, after I presented a particularly bold campaign concept to a conservative client who approved it enthusiastically. "There's a confidence in your work now that commands attention." 3 weeks after our confrontation, my mother sent a text that was clearly, carefully composed. "Olivia, I've been reflecting deeply on our conversation. I realize now how our actions have hurt you over the years. Your father and I would like to talk when you're ready. No pressure, just love." I didn't respond immediately, allowing myself time to consider whether I wanted to re-engage. After a week of reflection, I agreed to a conversation, suggesting we meet at a restaurant rather than their home to maintain neutral ground. The meeting was difficult. My mother arrived with a list of my birthdays and achievements she had compiled, seemingly trying to prove she had not forgotten as many as I claimed. My father alternated between defensive justifications and grudging acknowledgments that perhaps they had sometimes overlooked my accomplishments. "We never intended to make you feel less important," my mother insisted, tears threatening. "We just thought you were more self-sufficient, less needy of recognition." "That's the problem," I replied calmly. "You decided who I was and what I needed without ever actually seeing me or asking me. You created a narrative where Kyle needed constant celebration and I needed nothing. And then you acted surprised when I finally objected to that story." My father, uncomfortable with emotional discussions as always, tried to redirect the conversation to practical matters. "Your lake house investment isn't bad. Actually, waterfront property tends to appreciate well. Have you considered the tax implications?" It was a small olive branch from a man who struggled to acknowledge emotional harm, but could express connection through practical advice. I accepted it for what it was, discussing the financial aspects of my purchase while maintaining boundaries around my independence. The dinner ended with tentative plans to try again in a few weeks. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning, the first time in my adult life that my parents seemed to recognize me as an individual with valid feelings rather than simply Kyle's supportive sister. 6 months later, the family dynamic had shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. My parents still lavished attention on Kyle, but they made visible efforts to acknowledge my life as well. My mother called regularly, asking specific questions about my work projects rather than generic inquiries. My father occasionally sent articles related to marketing or property investment, his way of showing interest in my chosen paths. When my 32nd birthday approached, I received an actual invitation in the mail, a dinner celebration at a restaurant I had once mentioned liking. The card was signed by both parents and Kyle with a handwritten note. "We want to celebrate you properly this year. No excuses, no forgetting." The dinner itself was somewhat awkward, but genuinely well-intentioned. My mother had arranged for the restaurant to prepare a custom cake. My father gave me a gift certificate for a high-end furniture store for that lake house you're so proud of, and Kyle presented me with a framed photo of us as children. Arms around each other with a note on the back to many more years of being better siblings to each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. More importantly, I no longer measured my worth by their recognition. The lake house had become my true sanctuary, a place where I hosted friends for weekend getaways, worked remotely during beautiful summer weeks, and built traditions that were entirely my own. The most recent winter holiday, I invited Jordan and several other close friends to the lake house instead of attending the usual family gathering. We cooked elaborate meals together, went ice skating on the frozen lake, and exchanged thoughtful gifts by the fireplace. It was the most peaceful holiday I could remember. Kyle visited occasionally, sometimes with his wife, sometimes alone. Our relationship had evolved into something more balanced, more honest. He had begun the difficult work of recognizing his role in our family's dysfunction, and I had begun the equally challenging work of allowing him to change without holding his past behavior against him. My parents had visited the lake house only once, a brief and somewhat tense afternoon tea that nevertheless represented enormous progress from where we had been. My mother had complimented my decorating choices, and my father had reluctantly admitted the property was even better than it looked in the photos. As I sit on my deck now, watching another sunset paint the lake in gold and crimson, I reflect on the journey of the past year. The pain of being overlooked for so long hasn't completely disappeared, but it no longer defines me. I've learned that waiting for others to validate your worth is a losing proposition. True validation comes from within, from creating a life that reflects your values and brings you joy regardless of who notices. The lake house stands as a daily reminder that I am capable, successful, and worthy of beautiful things. Each morning I wake up here, whether for a weekend getaway or an extended stay, I feel a sense of peace that no amount of family recognition could provide. I created this sanctuary for myself when no one else thought to create space for me. If you're watching this and feeling overlooked in your own family, know that your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to recognize yourself, to celebrate your own achievements when others forget, to build something beautiful that's entirely yours. Have you ever had to create your own celebration when others forgot what matters to you? Share your story in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be celebrated, even if they have to be the one to throw the party. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the family that truly appreciates you is the one you build for yourself.